Welcome to the Travelman Podcast. My name is Ben and I host this cool travel podcast. If you're joining me for the first time, then I say thank you for listening. On today's episode, I'll be continuing my chat with Paul Papadimitriou, who co-hosts the very popular aviation podcast Layovers, which also features my mate Alex Hunter, who's the other co-host. And if you haven't heard part one, then I suggest go and have a listen to that before you listen to this, because then it will make more sense. Now, I just want to make a note that I've been saying Jason Stratham, and I think it's Jason Statham or something like that. So if Jason's been listening, sorry, buddy, and anyone else that's been really pulling their hair out from me saying Jason Stratham the whole time, then I'm really sorry also. So that's in part one. I say Jason Stratham instead of Jason Statham, and also there was a weird ending in part one as well, and then it just finished with me doing an outro part. Sorry about that. If that sounded weird, then of course I did it on purpose. Yeah, of course. So anyway, sit back, enjoy part two. If you haven't heard part one, then listen to that. But anyway, thanks for joining me, and hooroo. All right. So, Paul, do you have a favorite airport you love to fly into?
Yeah.
Or is there a few that you love flying
into?
Yeah.
If people listen to, for those who listen to Layovers, Zurich, and it's not because it's in Switzerland, because of course people accuse me of being national, patriotic or whatever. It's a medium-sized airport. There's 25, 30 million people a year. So again, apple and oranges. You cannot compare an airport of 3 people in one island to an airport like Hong Kong with 70 something. But the reason is because I'm particularly appreciative of airports that pay attention to details, which is also why I love Japan, attention to details. And this is an airport that is well designed, very easy to understand, very easy to make a layover in, where it seems to be making a lot of sense in how you transfer. And this is, for me, what makes a great airport. It's very efficient. It's beautifully designed as well, as in artistically, architecturally, especially for those who've been there that understand the gates E, where the international flights, big birds are leaving. It's concrete and black and wood. I love that kind of design. So that's my favorite. Now, if I go internationally, so meaning large airports, is there one that is really, of course, the usual trio of airports people talk about is Singapore, Hong Kong, and Seoul, Incheon. I don't like the carpet in Singapore, and I don't like the fact that they have security at the gate. Hong Kong, it's a fantastic airport.
They do too.
Hong Kong is a fantastic airport to connect to. They have the best lounge in the world, but I think that their design is too clinical. However, I love the canopy. The ceiling is fantastic. I would say I have a very emotional relationship with airports. So probably I would say airports in Japan in general are very good. Yeah, but Zurich is fantastic. Yeah. What's your favorite?
I would say that my favorite would be Singapore, except for that thing that you just mentioned. I was just in Singapore a couple of months ago, and the security, I don't get that. Why you have to go through feels like twice or something. You go through and then you've still got to go through and do something else.
You know what? In a pre-9/11 world, it makes a lot of sense, because in a pre-9/11 world, it means that everybody can basically walk into the airport, even shop, and only passengers go to the gate. In a post 9/11 world with heavy security, it just doesn't make any sense anymore. Actually, Terminal 4, which used to be the budget terminal at Singapore, now has security at the entrance. So that's good. And I don't for those, because they might not understand, I don't like the carpets. Try to carry a carry-on, so just on the wheels, on the carpets. It's sticky.
Yeah,
I don't know why. I don't know if they put it on purpose, but it's I walk super fast and that carpet slows me down, which is a bad point for me to Singapore. But they have a waterfall, they have a movie theater, they have a jungle, they have everything. It's amazing. It's a bit of a mall, let's be honest, a shopping center, but it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's like all these airports. The reason they always come up in first in all the rankings in the world is because they're fantastic, right? It's but in terms for me, I like beautiful design. I love architecture, so there's something about the Gates E at Zurich that makes for me the winner here. What do you have a least favorite airport? Do you have a least favorite airport?
Me,
yeah,
probably somewhere in Australia, maybe somewhere in Tasmania, maybe Launceston, where it's just you get out and it just feels like it's a portable, like it's some school classroom. You just walk through, I don't know, something like that, probably.
Mine is, and again, people will listen to the podcast. Layovers will know mine is Frankfurt. Frankfurt is a disaster.
So your least favorite is Frankfurt?
Oh my God, it's everything. It's from the incomprehensible design. They have made some design decisions that you have to. Literally, it's the only airport in the world when, let's say, you have a layover. You land at gate. I'm going to invent something. You land at gate 22,
107,
and you're supposed to leave at gate 23, and they're able to F that up. As in, you have to walk through three different zones and like go through 5 securities, and have the security people are the worst in the world. They just don't care. You miss all the connection. It's just, I don't know. And you know what? It's not about the Germans, because Munich is one of the best airports in Europe. It's so efficient. It's so clear. It works, at least Terminal 2, the Lufthansa one. It works super well. Frankfurt,
that's a good terminal.
It's just a very, very, very bad airport. Frankfurt, every time, and I do fly a lot there. I hate it.
Yeah, but I don't know why they choose Frankfurt as a hub.
Yeah, because it's the economical capital, if you want. Probably it's even Charles de Gaulle, so Paris, which is honestly bad. I've tamed it over there. I've tamed it over the years. I found ways to kind of accept it as it is. Frankfurt, no way. I still hate it. It's just and I don't hate a lot of things in my life, but Frankfurt, I mean, for me, they could just tear it down and start over.
Well, they probably could. Well, coming from Australia and going into Europe, if you want to go to, say, for instance, my wife's Croatian. If we want to go to Croatia, some of the best flights are via Frankfurt.
Yeah, evidently, yeah. Oh God.
So, Frankfurt's a terrible place. It's you know what though, Pete? I find it's much nicer to fly out of an airport than to come into an airport. I think they spend a lot more money on your experience flying out of an airport than your experience flying into an airport, bar maybe Singapore.
Also, let's be honest.
I think most airports are beautiful.
There's also a difference, very heavy, that influences all of us. Not only because some people like me, first I fly a lot, but I also tend to fly to the same layovers destination. So of course, when you're overexposed to a place, you start picking up on some details that you hate. When maybe you fly only twice
like the carpet.
In your life, yeah, exactly. Absolutely. But the other thing that is also important is that it's a very different experience when you just do a layover than when you do when you actually land as a destination or origin place. I know that a lot of people hate Heathrow, but I never do. I used to, but it's been like more than 8 years, because I've been 8 years in the UK now. It's more than 8 years that I haven't done a layover at Heathrow. So I don't really see that part. I only see that for me as an origin and destination airport. So somewhere I land and then I go home. It's an easy airport. Of course, I have favorites in terms of terminals, but even overall, it's an easy. Now, I understand that it's not the same for people who are just switching aircraft for another destination. And that's the same for every airport. And I've been to Frankfurt as a destination airport twice in my life, and that was a better experience. It was not a great experience, but it was better than layover. So this is why these lists, when you see online people saying, well, the 10 best or 10 worst, is very heavily dependent on what you appreciate in an airport. For me, it's the speed and design. Yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, I mean, Frankfurt, there's no way it's the best airport in the world in any type of ranking. For me, it's just bad. Sorry.
So yeah, I'm going to get the CEO of Frankfurt Airport on next podcast, and I'll be. Oh no, yeah, he's never coming on now.
I'm going to be banned for life.
Carl Jujman. Carl, sorry, mate. Yeah, you won't be coming on the podcast now. Anyway, so obviously you're flying into airports, you're flying out of airports, you're going to be up in the sky probably, where hopefully you stay in the sky and then you land. But when you're flying, Paul, what's the best scenery you've ever flown over?
Oh man, there's
best
so many.
Country with the best scenery or something.
There's
like
so
that.
many. I'm gonna give you. I'm like out of just on the top of my head.
You can give me,
like 2 or 3.
Three.
Yeah.
Right. Three
So
is good.
my best memory ever was landing. So approaching Japan from Hong Kong up the coast from Kagoshima,
so
which
heading
is north, towards Tokyo, basically the southern tip. And at the same time, it's very early in the morning. So the sun is actually rising very slowly. And so probably it's 4:40 a.m. summer. So the sun kind of rises early in Japan. And then it doesn't, their time zone makes it that it rises early. It's not, it rises early in Japan, man. and it was misty. And I could see the mountains, and I could see at some point Mount Fuji, and everything was kind of misty. It was it's my best memory, honestly. And it was, I was not tired or not sleepy, so I was just watching. This is why always a window seat. Departing from Haneda, so that's Tokyo as well, on a clear day, not because there's so many runways, but I was sitting on the left side, and I saw super clearly one day as well Mount Fuji. That's a fantastic. So I had how do you call that? I had Tokyo and the skyscrapers of Tokyo in front, and Mount Fuji in the back, and that was absolutely beautiful. Another more recently that was striking. It's not purely commercial aviation, let's be honest, but I flew with a seaplane from Hanoi International Airport to the Halong Bay. And flying over the Halong Bay, man, you have to do it, guys.
That would be unbelievable.
You have to do it. It's absolutely beautiful. Okay, I cheat because it's not a natural. I mean, it's commercial flight, as in you can buy a ticket, but it's like a small aircraft. But back to big aircraft.
No, that counts.
Okay, two more. I'm always struck by the deserts around the Persian Gulf and the GCC, so the Gulf countries in general. So it's very striking. Yeah. So when you fly any Middle Eastern airline, you'll be there. The big steppes in Kazakhstan are also snowy, but also they're all white, but they're similar. It's very striking. And for some reason, I always love flying over the US. If you do, I've done not recently, but I've done JFK to Phoenix, and flying over the US is always something that I enjoy. But because I need
during
to be
the day.
I need to be Swiss for a second. The Swiss Alps is always something striking. There you go.
Swiss Alps.
Yes.
Mont Blanc.
Yes, and everything. It's actually nice. Mont Blanc is actually located in France and Italy, but yeah, you can see it. But the Swiss, it's almost a cliche. And by the way, if anyone kind of loves seeing airplanes, Swiss, the company Swiss is not called Swissair anymore because that went bankrupt. But Swiss does on their YouTube channel. They do videos. When they have an introduction of a new aircraft, whether it's a 777, etc., they take beautiful footage of that one flying over the Swiss Alps, usually as well with some fighter aircrafts. And you have these wonderful images of an aircraft over the Swiss Alps. And these are fantastic videos to look at.
Wow.
So, yeah, I encourage every one of you to do that.
Have you ever become emotional when flying over scenery?
Yes, I am a very emotional person in general. I attach a lot of, for me, again, and I want to, because we've been talking about aircrafts, I do this podcast because I love aircrafts. I'm a kid, I'm a geek when I talk about that. But at the end of the day, what matters to me is the travel itself, is the destination, is the people I'm going to meet, it's the pictures I'm going to take, thus the scenery I'm going to see. And of course, they are. The world, man, I mean, you probably have the same. The world is so big and so different, and you have all these sceneries, and sometimes, whether it's flying over, pure nature. Again, maybe you've done, since we just talked about Vietnam, if you fly from Ho Chi Minh City to Hanoi, and you're sat on the right side, you basically go all over the coast, and you can see a lot of it is still untouched and beautiful. And I just mentioned Kazakhstan. Of course, it's like just steps of nothingness for thousands of kilometers, and it's just snow, and it's beautiful. And you're like, yeah, of course. I mean, we live on a beautiful planet. I mean, sometimes we F it up, sometimes we destroy it, and it's bad. But at the end of the day, I am more myself enthused about and that's been my driving force since in my work and everything I do, is what humans built. So this is why I said earlier I'm a city guy, because I love seeing what we're doing, what we're building, like whether it's skyscrapers or museums or whatever. And for instance, one of the best approaches, if that is beautiful, is Rio de Janeiro, but not the main airport, which is an international one, but a small one, which is in the center of the city. Okay. I think it's that one, man, you literally fly over some of the favelas and whatever, and it's striking. It's absolutely, they are. I mean, I could talk for hours about this. I'm going to stop now, but yes, to answer your question, yes, of course, there's stuff. Yeah. Let's be also there's a scientific reason that, I don't know if you ever watch movies when you are in flight, but if you watch a movie that is either a romantic comedy or a drama, or you're probably going to cry, is not only because you are emotional. I'm sure you're an emotional person. It's also because of hypoxia, of the lack of oxygen kind of enhances our senses, and thus we cry more easily.
No way.
Really? Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Usually, it's a known fact that, I mean, hypoxia, it has a lot of effects as well. This is why you shouldn't drink too much, because you get dehydrated. But yes, you're going to cry more easily usually in an aircraft. And there's also the fact that you're like, basically a metal tube. So you're kind of confined environment and closeness with other people. So yeah, there's a scientific reason apparently that why we cry. So maybe I get emotional because I'm simply in an aircraft, but yeah, come on, it's beautiful. I'm sure you agree. There's some stuff that you see that it's unbelievable. And you realize how small we are as human beings as well when you see these things.
Oh, absolutely. So that's why I cried in Rambo First Blood.
Yeah, that movie. Wow, I haven't seen that one forever. Well, I don't know if I've actually cried. Yeah, maybe I did actually. Yeah. The hero, the unsung hero.
Very emotional.
Yes.
There was a time, though, I did cry going over scenery myself. So someone might eventually ask me the same question I've asked you, but I was flying over the New Zealand Alps.
Oh,
which
I've
is
heard
their
about
fjords and stuff.
Yeah, that must be beautiful.
Oh my God, it's the most beautiful scenery I've ever flown over, and I was just bawling. I was like, I'm the luckiest guy in the world with 274 other passengers to see this. And I'm the only guy here crying his eyes out. I was bawling.
Man. No shame. It's it's okay. I think it's.
I was, oh my God! And then I was on a flight from New York to Miami, and we watched a cartoon, Mandy, my wife, and I, and it was a cartoon based. It was the Day of the Dead cartoon. I forgot the name of it. Coco, I think it's called.
Oh,
and it had the families dying and a beautiful movie. I was a mess. There was snot everywhere. There was water in my eyes. I couldn't see half the film because my eyes were all glazed over. And yeah, geez, the woman next to me must have thought I don't know, something's wrong with me.
No, it's a very nice movie, by the way. It's a cool animation. I liked it.
It's my favorite animation. So yeah. So that was the Coco episode. We enjoyed Coco. What do you give it out of 10?
Coco, a good 7, 8, 8 probably. It's really, it's very endearing.
Endearing. That's absolutely the best terminology for that. And talking about endearing, what's the best way to get cheap airline tickets, Paul?
Oh my God! If there was one that everybody used, I mean, I search everywhere. It takes me an inordinate amount of time. I mean, between Google Flights, which I use because Google Flights is just super fast. Momondo, Kayak, all these guys, all the the travel booking sites, flight booking sites. But at the end of the day, I think these surface kind of good deals if they exist. It's good to be on newsletters from some of the airlines because they have, sale periods, or they have like some aggregators that give you the same. You have tons of websites that warn you when there's a deal. But at the end of the day, and I'm lucky for that reason, at the end of the day, the best way to find a good deal and to have a good deal on a flight is not to fly where everybody flies to, and not to fly at the same time that everybody wants to fly to. So that's it. If you can afford to fly outside of school holidays and not to Bali, for you guys, for instance, and go to a place which is less known,
I'm not sure I understand.
Sorry, my Siri just went up. I'm going to start that. So if you're just lucky to being able to fly outside of regular times that travelers do, or in a place that maybe is less traveled, you can find sometimes absolutely great deals. And the two other things is accept layovers, which is what we called our show Layovers, is because sometimes, of course, if you add one stop, and I know for you it might mean from Australia 3 stops or 4 stops, but you might actually get better deals, and maybe also to separate by 2 separate tickets. One to go to, I don't know, let's say one goes to Singapore and you buy a separate ticket from Singapore to Kazakhstan, whatever. You can find actually good deals. And the repositioning, it's probably less important in Australia, though it could be, because I've never actually looked into it. But in Europe or sometimes in the US, for us, for instance, if London is known to have maybe the highest prices in the world because it's a premium city, everybody flies here, the planes are always full anyway, so why would they give you a deal because the planes are full anyway? But you have great deals leaving from Northern Europe. So if I fly out from Stockholm, this is basically what I did. I flew from Stockholm to go to Melbourne, and the price was 35% off from if I had to take in the same flights, the same airline from London. So I buy a cheap flight to go to Stockholm. I, of course, give myself a few hours, so in case the flight is delayed, I can still make the connection. And then I fly from there. And you can find that in Oslo, Stockholm, Stavanger, in places. I mean, basically accepting the fact that you can, if you tweak a little bit your travel plans. But I realized that it's easy to say when you have either time like I have, as in I can fly pretty much anywhere I want. I don't have a boss that tells me when to go back to work because I'm my own boss, basically. And you don't have also, you don't have a family, or you don't have to rely. If you really only do have 1 week of holiday, and that 1 week of holiday happens to be on the school holidays, the only thing you can do is booking super early. So like almost a year in advance. People in the UK, often book their Christmas, if they want to go away, they book their Christmas flights in January, right? So super early, because the earlier you go, the better deals you might actually have, right? So there you go. My answer is, sadly, there's no like secret sauce, or it just take a lot of time. That takes a lot of time, man.
So do a lot of those flights that you take around the world, do they come out of your pocket, or do they come out of the company's pocket?
No, I'm lucky to have a lot of it coming from my clients. However, the one thing that I do differently from a lot of people is that and it's a bit of a cash flow risk. I'm not going to talk about business here, but I pay the flights myself, and I get reimbursed on the flights, because I want to have. I want to first choose how I fly, meaning which airline.
And you get the points.
And also, most importantly, and that's the most important to me, actually, I just want to have the hand of the flights, because if it's a third party that booked the flight for you, let's say it's a travel agent, a travel agent in Melbourne books the flight to Melbourne for me from London. And let's say it's Qantas. So Qantas does a stop in Singapore now, not Dubai anymore. And I'm in Singapore, and in Singapore, suddenly the second flight, the flight that goes to Melbourne, is, let's say, canceled or super delayed, and I have to do something about it. Some airlines, not all, but some airlines, because I have booked through a third party, which is a travel agent, will say, no, you cannot do anything. You need to ask your travel agent to do something. Or if I want to cancel the second leg or change the flight, you don't have that's what I meant by having the hand of the flight. If I book myself, like all of us, you can basically go on the app or on the website and manage your booking, right? So sometimes this is why I really like to have the full hand. Of course, it also means that sometimes, because a lot of my clients pay business class, I'm very, for those who listen to Layovers, they will know I'm very lucky to be very often in business class. Well, it also means that I always have to pay business class in advance. So hence I said risk, because if the client then doesn't pay me back, well, put a lot of money in it. But yeah, I'm lucky.
True, yeah.
But in general, to answer more directly your question, yeah, I'm very lucky because these clients pay for these flights. Very rarely have to pay for them. And then obviously when I take a vacation, I have all those miles, so I can upgrade myself in vacation, for instance, which is awesome.
I'm going to ask you a couple more questions, and then I'll ask you my final questions.
Okay,
These questions are pretty much just about you, not travel, and then some final questions. But so you're a keynote speaker, CEO, and you're the founder for Intelligencer. Can you tell me just briefly what Intelligencer do?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's me, because I never pushed the brand of Intelligencer. It was more to find a way to.
I like it.
It's a company I created when I was living in Japan. It's still with me to this day. It's now located overseas because I moved to the UK. We've done a lot of stuff. At the end of the day, I hire people that are smarter than me to satisfy clients, their needs. But it's a lot that has to do with marketing, branding, launches, and we were doing a lot of innovation programs back in the day. Less now. When I say innovation program, is when a company tries to launch something new, they usually don't know also how to handle that something new, and thus we did create some innovation programs for companies. This is how, by the way, I also ended up facilitating some of the innovation program for the travel industry. With IATA. And so it's not specific to travel. So we've worked with a lot of technology, FMCG, so beers as well. We've worked with travel as well, both airports, airlines, etc. It's really a lot of different things, which, because my career and myself, we have ADD, I guess. So we do also content production. I produce, unbeknownst to a lot of people, I produce 5 other podcasts where I do not appear. So of course, I produce on behalf of. I've created shows and produced them through this company as well. So it's really a lot around, basically, as I said earlier, what humans build. I've always been fascinated to figuring out how humans connect. This is what travel is so fascinating. What influences these humans, including technology? And I had 4 startups because I was always tech heavy. How we interact, how we transact, and that translates into the innovation work I just mentioned, the branding work, the content work, because it's always like, okay, you have a product. How would that product be seen by someone else? How would that be understood? How would they feel home using it? Or maybe that's not what you want. You want them to feel edgy. So this is where it's always been for me the kind of common link. And at the end of the day, it's the same as human beings. The way I see you is not the same way you see yourself, and not the same way, Mandy, your partner sees you. So it's the same thing with a product. At the end of the day, the way I see let's say I have in front of me my iPhone, is probably different from how you perceive the same brand and how somebody else perceives in Manila the same brand, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's fascinating to try to understand these dynamics and then to find products. So this is, and also working around innovation around that is absolutely something that always triggers my I'm fascinated by that. Yeah.
No, that is really interesting.
I will add something. Sorry to interrupt you right here. My company is networked, as in, I said, I hire people that are smarter than me, and that's this is how. Actually, I said very on the top of the show, I said, this is how we started kind of talking with Alex. Is I needed someone who had done a specific thing and understood a specific way of launching a product. He had done that with Virgin America, even though it was nothing to do with airlines. I said, this guy is smarter than me, gets that. I understand the dynamic, but I had never done practically. And I said, do you want to work with me? And this is how I've been working. I hire people per basis on project basis. Sorry. So this is how I do. I always, at the end of the day, I just hire people that are smarter than me. And there's a lot of people smarter than me, so it's great.
Where do I send my resume?
I'll give you the address afterwards. I'm very easy to
Thank
find.
you, sir. Thank you, sir. You are. There'll be no problems giving you a resume. I've been online. I watched your TEDx Athens, which is probably about 6-7 years old now.
Yeah,
there's a quote by Kazantzakis.
Yes, correct.
Every perfect traveler always creates the country where he travels. It's a really interesting quote. Can you just tell me a little bit more about why you like this quote?
So I'm very aware that we already are here an hour and a half into the recording, and people will start getting tired of listening to me. So I'm going to try.
A lot of people have switched off or fallen asleep.
Not too long, but it's okay. Yeah, it's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite authors. Is obviously a Greek author. He was a favorite of my father. That's probably why I got kind of hooked. He's very well known for. If you've never heard about him, you've heard about Zorba the Greek. That's him. And you probably heard about the movie that was very controversial back in the day, The Last Temptation of the Christ. The book on which it's based is also him. That. Yeah, that's also him. So he's done some very well-known books. He's a religious. He's not a religious man, but talks about the exaltation of travel, the exaltation of life, which is why it's very emotional. I like it. I'm going to give you before I get to that sentence. His favorite sentence of mine, his favorite saying of his is on his tomb. He says, "I hope for nothing, I fear nothing, I am free." And this is really the kind of way I always love seeing life. Is like I don't have to rely on others. I don't have to think that there is someone else up there or around. I can rely on my own. It's something. That's the ultimate freedom. If you can actually don't have a lot of fears, which I try to do. I talked about travel. That's the same. If you're not afraid, you can actually travel even more, try new stuff, food, destinations, meeting people. And another sentence that I really love, it says, "A person needs a little madness or else they never dare cut the rope and be free." It's the same thing. You have to be a little mad to enjoy life. You have to do stuff that you say, why did I just do that? Let's do it anyway. And this is how you kind of move forward. Otherwise, you be too comfortable. And so that sentence, every perfect traveler always creates the country where he travels, is actually was quoted in a book back in the 60s by a Canadian Globe and Mail, actually. There was the paper, a Canadian journalist from the Globe and Mail who had lived in China and wrote this book. It's called Reporter in Red China or something. The point is not a book, but the point is that this is what we'll be talking since the start of this podcast and this episode, is that imagine someone living in China in the 1960s. Nobody knew anything about China. It was like suddenly, now it seems that, and we still don't know a lot about China because people make a lot of wrong assumptions, but it's the thing that's the first thing that I take out of this sentence is sometimes you go to, I mentioned Manila earlier, I mentioned Vietnam. I didn't know what to expect when you're in Vietnam. And when we go to a country, to a place, to a city for the first time, you travel with your own eyes, you carry your own experience, your expectations. And sometimes you don't see the same thing. You might see. I think you've been to Vietnam recently, right? Right? Correct, Ben?
Yeah. I was in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, and I went up to Cam Ranh as well.
So your Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City experience might be different than mine, and not because it's different because we've been not to the same places, but because you're Ben with your set of experiences and I am, and this is where we create the country where we travel. We not only carry what we are with us, and then we, through the meetings with people, we create an image of the country. For me, the people always makes the country, whether it's in Vietnam, whether it was in Kazakhstan. I was just right there 2 weeks ago, actually. It's always the people,
That's
and
that
creates the experience, that creates the country, and suddenly that creates an image of the country that stays with you. Meaning, my version of the country is not the same as your version of the country or the place, which is back to what I said earlier. My version of you is not the same version of you that Mandy has, for instance. And this is what this kind of sentence tells. And of course, again, coming back to the fact that it was quoted in this book, it's the fact that we're very lucky to suddenly now we can do it. We can create these countries. We can try to visit places that have been untraveled yet. And that's wonderful. We know the Chinese better, to take that example, but that doesn't mean we get them. It's not because I went 10 days in Vietnam that I understand Vietnam. But we create these countries in our head, and all these experiences coming together, and then we discuss them on a podcast like we do now. It creates, I don't know, creates a new image, creates an emotional link. I don't know. It's just, for me, this sentence is really what drives me. You know, it's the podcast I've been talking, and the fact that I love airplanes. Yeah, that's a geeky bit, but at the end of the day, I love the people. I love what they build, the cultures they build, the architecture they build, the ways of life they have. And so I create this country in my head. When I travel, I suddenly change some of the image, and then I carry this image with me when I leave. You can tell I'm very emotional about traveling. We all do that, definitely. By the way, right? It's and by the way, this is also why I don't have a video series. You know, a lot of people ask me, why don't you do like Alex does, something maybe not the same, obviously, but like some. And it's because I always have had, so far at least, a hard time kind of translating what I mean here. In that book, the guy in China, at the end of the day, what he wrote was more about the Chinese than it was about China. It was not about the regime. Okay. It was about the Chinese ways of life and
the people.
The people. And the people, it's something to me that is really hard to translate into words, because when you meet someone, maybe you meet someone in yourself in Ho Chi Minh, maybe it's a barman, or maybe she's a tour guide, or whatever. You create an emotional link, and she shows you her country, or he shows you his country. And this is super, it's amazing to experience, but super hard to translate into any words or video or podcast, because it's very personal. It kind of creates an emotion within you. And this is why, by the way, some people tell me, Paul, why do you travel in some of the places when the regimes are not great? I'm like, yeah, but because that's one thing, but I'm able to separate the fact that, you know, of course I might not agree with the government, but the people are still amazing. And I know it's hard. You have to kind of be schizophrenic, but it is. You don't have to agree with everything a country stands for, or at least what the government wants you to stand for, that you don't have to visit it and meet the people. That's the beauty of travel. You discover that people are not. This is what was my discovery when I traveled to Pakistan for the first time. I went to Karachi, and you have all these images about what Pakistan. I mean, for me, Pakistan. Of course, I live in London, so half of my Uber drivers are Pakistani, and I have a lot of great food here. But that's pretty much all I knew about it, and the rest is generally bad news, because you hear about some whatever happening there. And you go there and you realize it's such a layered country, such a complex country, not at all what I expected to be, and wonderful people. And well, there you go. This is but I mean, I created the country in my head. I'm not a perfect traveler, but coming back to the sentence is what I did. I created an image in my head, and thanks to the people I met. And yeah, it's, I don't know. We always put ourselves in where we go, and then we destroy these assumptions, and then we create that new country in our head. I mean, it's which is why it's so fantastic to being to travel, because you have to be uncomfortable. You learn how to be uncomfortable the more you do it, and the more you do it, the more you discover. And by the way, sometimes people are too cautious. I didn't get that earlier.
That's true.
Have you been to Japan yourself? Yes, right?
Yes, I've been to Japan a couple of years ago. I was there. Because I went to Tokyo.
People have this thing when they do go to Japan, and of course it's easier to say that from me, because I not only live there, but I go very often, is they create this image in their head of what Japan is supposed to be, polite and, you know, reserved and so well organized, etc., which is true. But there's another huge part of Japan that they might not see because they're being too cautious. And when I say too cautious, you don't have to become a moron and do stupid things like some bad tourists do in destinations. But for instance, people are almost too cautious when they eat. They go to a sushi place and they kind of, and nicely so. They want to not disrespect the food, but they're too conscious. Actually, a lot of the food in Asia in general, in Japan as well, is eaten a bit roughly, and that's fine. And I'm like, go for it, and you'll see that people actually will encourage you, and it's fine. It's not as square that we see in Japan, and that's the thing you can only learn if you travel. And and I'll end with to answer this very long answer to your question, that this is also why I always have a camera with me, because it's I love to walk. I walk. We said many times in this episode, we're getting lost. Like you, I love to get lost, and I love to walk, and I walk, and I walk, and I walk. And the camera kind of drives me, not my phone, my camera kind of drives me forward. So I want to go there to take the picture. And it's very selfish. I almost never publish any other pictures. It's just like, I have this camera. It's also, and it's not only a selfish tool, it's also a translation tool. It's because it's a conversation opener. Again, the markets in Karachi, almost impossible to discuss through language with the people that were selling stuff there. But the camera, they started playing with it, being in front, wanted to smile. Can you take a picture of me? And I took the wonderful portrait because I had that camera, which suddenly made it playful. Whereas, of course, that's very cultural. Some countries don't like cameras as much, but basically it forces, it creates conversation even without language. And man, I've been to stuff, I mentioned the backstreet of Hanoi. I've been in favelas in Rio with a camera. I've landed in a bar in Taipei, and we started singing Bon Jovi together until the end of the night. I didn't understand the word what they're saying otherwise. We just translated into awesome. Singing. I ended up in some rave in Tirana in Albania. It was freaking fantastic. Or I played air guitar in Nur Sultan, so that's the capital of Kazakhstan. Or the worst probably is the worst, or the best, depending on how you see it, is I accepted a drink from friends in Manila, since we talked about Manila, and another friend that I didn't know said, "Hey, do you want to have another drink?" I said, "Yeah, but let's go somewhere else." Okay, let's do that. And then I end up in a second bar, and the same happens again. There's another guy where I don't know that adds up and says, "Hey, Paul, do you want to have another drink to another bar?" With 20 minutes. And that goes on until I'm like 2.5 hours away from the center for where my hotel is, in a bar with people with guns. And the people with guns and I have my camera, and I'm still having a lot of fun. We're singing karaoke there, and then I have a hard time, of course, finding a drive back. No, people were super fun. That's the thing. Of course, again, this is where the tall European helps a lot, to be frank. And the camera was also helping a lot. And then I was telling my friends where I was the next day. They were, "Are you crazy? You're insane. This is super dangerous, whatever." But I mean, so sometimes don't be me, because I go too easily on some stuff I should be more aware of. But it was a fantastic experience. This is how it happens. I've seen or simply, we talked about nature, simply seeing the thunder in the deserts in Gulf countries, and suddenly you have rain in the desert. This is something. I mean, if you have to see that once in your life, if you can, it's absolutely fantastic. But that camera has something. I had a last travel story. I had a camera when I was visiting the Palestine back when the Intifada was going on. So basically, and I almost got shot at. There were shots fired and whatever. And the fact that I had this camera kind of, maybe I'm just rewriting history. Maybe it was just lucky to not be shot at, or maybe I would have never been shot at. I don't know. I didn't get shot at, but the fact that I had a camera and it's not a threatening camera maybe helped. I don't know. It's just, so I can see I'm a little bit crazy sometimes, because over time you're getting lost and getting uncomfortable. You kind of push the boundaries, and you shouldn't maybe. But
Well, I wouldn't do karaoke in Pyongyang again, Paul. So probably stay away from. I'm so jealous. I really want to go to Pyongyang. No, I mean,
I haven't been.
You should. Oh man,
One day.
you should. Let's go together, because this is the kind of place that I do not agree with the regime. I think, a lot of the thing is batshit crazy, but at the same time, the people, I'm sure, are very nice and kind and try to live a normal life, at least as normal as they understand it to be. And it must be still fascinating. I do not condone what the regime is doing. But yes, absolutely. You know,
me and Alex will go to Pyongyang and do karaoke.
You know, we need to live.
Somehow.
It's easy to say that probably for us, but we need to live. By the way, I treat my camera the same way I love life and people. You know, my Leica has scars all over it. It fell into the sea. There's like sand already. Like, we accept a little bit of roughness. I'm not saying that you have to, being beaten up. That's not what I'm saying, but it's great. You know, people were treating their lives a little bit less perfect, like Instagram perfect. It would be a bit better world, I think. Sorry, that was a very long answer to your question. We're going to get 2 hours for this episode. I'm so sorry, guys.
Easy. No, it's all right. They're cool. They don't mind. They'll just probably listen to it in sections, because exactly. I think that's what my listeners do. They listen to it in 2 parts. But the last of the questions before I ask you a final question, or maybe I got another one. I don't care if it goes over 2 hours, whatever. I don't care. So I've seen on your Instagram that you shared, or I think there was a picture of you and Barack Obama. You were doing keynote together.
Look, it was not together.
That would have been amazing.
That would have been amazing, but not that important. But look, in my career and life, I've been lucky to meet some pretty. I don't really have heroes in my life. I don't have people that I mean, of course, you have people that you admire, but I've never had heroes who's. My mother, she was from Finland. She brought me up to be a very independent, relying on yourself only type of person. And so I never really, but meeting people like him, I didn't have to, security detail, whatever. It was after he was president. It's impossible. I mean, my interaction with him was not meaningful. But I've met, if you want me to drop names, please indulge me for a minute.
Drop some names.
Yeah, Mandela back in the 1990s, Tony Blair, Bill Clinton, more recently Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple, or Tony Fadell, the founder of the iPod and Nest, and that he sold to Google. And I interviewed prime ministers on stage. But probably the funner, although I do not condone his politics, but the funner interaction I ever had with such it's an icon. I talked for a few minutes with Fidel Castro when he was alive, and that was kind of. I was a young kid, so I didn't know. I was a student, didn't know what to say. That was smart. I probably looked like very dumb. I'm still very dumb, but I was. It's. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change. All these interactions, none of them were truly meaningful. It was like happening to be in the right place at the right time. Bill Clinton, for instance, I was working at a World Trade Organization in Geneva, because my first thought as a career was, before I fell into startups, was I'm going to be like a diplomat or something like that, working because I love, international relations and politics and affairs and whatever. And Bill Clinton was giving a speech that day to the plenary. And of course, I was not allowed in the plenary because I'm not a member of these countries, officials or whatever. But I BS'd my way in with some people who spoke Greek, and they gave me a seat and said, just stay here and you'll be fine. You'll be able to maybe chat with Bill Clinton or whatever. That was fun. That's a bit of the nutshell of my life. Always trying to BS my way into or outside of situations. And but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What is meaningful is more meaningful to talking to you now for 2 hours. Sorry, guys. And no, honestly, I never had, this is why I don't have heroes. I'd rather speak to a lady in the backstreet of Hanoi serving me street chicken, or at least she says it's chicken.
Or
maybe
banh mi.
It could be any, or a street vendor in Jakarta, or this barman I remember in one of the favelas in Rio that served me drinks. I didn't know even what the drinks were. Or this is more meaningful to me, because I'm not saying that Bill Clinton or Barack Obama are unreal people. I'm sure that they're very cool to have a beer with, but the chance to me having that is close to zero. Whereas these people, you can meet them very easily. If you're just a bit open-minded, you can meet so many people, interesting people that have great and crazy lives, or at least very different lives from the ones you have. And if you don't do like me now, just don't talk too much, just listen. It's absolutely fascinating. I think that's what drives me. I'd rather speak to some barman in a bar lost in Shibuya at 3 a.m. than to meet a star. You know what I mean? And I'm sure some of these stars, by the way, are fantastic. I'm sure Barack Obama, because that was your question, I'm sure that he's a guy that you and me would be sitting in a bar having a beer with him, a beer like how Bourdain did when he had food with him. That'd be cool. He must be a very interesting guy to talk about life and whatever. I'm sure he is. It's just that the chance of it happening, even though I wish, are so close to nil that I'd rather do that with some unknowns. And then you never know. You meet some cool people. I've met some famous stars in bars, especially in Tokyo, super late at night and and then
like and Lost in Translation
style, or
in a bar. Wow.
I've met very famous entrepreneur. Didn't know who she was for the entire night. Had she's filthy rich. Not that it matters to me, but meaning everybody knew who she was, not me for some reason. And I had sushi with her, talked to her the whole night until she left because she was jet lagged. And then I didn't realize that I talked to this famous person, and the reason that it was so cool is because I never realized I was talking to a famous person. So I talked to her as if she was just some random person. And this taught me to be like that all the time. I don't care about who people are. I don't care, Ben, if tomorrow you're the next prime minister of your country or become a superstar in podcasting, whatever. It's just Ben, and we'll have a beer and we'll just have fun. I don't care. You know what I mean? Yes. You're not going to be better than now or worse than now because you're famous. Nope. You're just going to be Ben.
Be the same guy.
Yeah, that's
exactly. I some of my greatest conversations with people have been Uber drivers and barmen.
Yeah,
where you just sit and you talk about something for however long you're in the car or at the bar, and you get lost in the story, and that is just amazing.
100%, man. 100%. We're the same, man. We're made of the same cloth. This is so much fascinating. I mean, the life stories you can hear.
I think we need to meet.
Yeah, we will. I'll come to.
I've got so many bloody stories. Can I ask you about MH370 and your theory on it? I just thought about it while we were talking.
About what? Sorry?
I thought that would be interesting. MH370.
Oh my God.
You know, the plane that was taken by the aliens and all that stuff.
My God. Nobody knows until we actually find it, which we might actually never find it. At first, I think there was a lot of mistakes done by the way it was monitored while it was happening, as in it was going over some military airspace, and maybe the person was not there. They didn't want to. The governments around the region were too slow to react to a plane that was misdirected. Maybe was it a pilot? That's most likely explanation. Is the pilot took over and probably maybe either wanted to off himself or off everybody. I don't know. That's the thing. It's impossible to know and this is why we have all these conspiracy theories, because as long as we don't find, and it's so sad for the families not to have been able to find a place or remnants because you cannot really close that chapter, we'll have all these stories about it's been taken by aliens or by a government that wants to use the plane to crash into a tower, or by some foreign military power that wants to, it can be, or he actually landed the next day, but nobody talks about it because it was a medical experiment, BS like this. The straight explanation is probably, and sadly, because I don't want to put the omen on him, the pilot kind of took over. There's a lot of things that point to that he was like training on flight simulators, had some flight path in his place. Was it a terror attack? Was he trying to kill people for some action? Maybe, though it's unlikely because he would have left maybe a word, but maybe actually left one, but the government doesn't want to release it because they're afraid that he creates copycats. It's so hard to know, man. At the end of the day, I don't think it's an accident. I don't think the plane had an issue, though. Again, that's pure speculation. I think it's some human, probably the pilot, that changed the direction of the flight, then either crashed it into the sea or just let it fly until he ran out of fuel and then he crashed into the sea. And I don't know. I wish we can find it one day, because we kind of resolve a lot of it, though by that time probably all the recordings and whatever will have been erased by the sea salt and whatever. But
the black box will be done.
Yeah, exactly. Because, now they don't even emit a sound anymore, so you cannot really find them anymore. But will we find them? Or maybe, it crashed in such a big, the Pacific Ocean is such a big place, an uninhabited place. And we looked for it. I mean, you guys in Australia paid a lot of money to try to send boats and radars and sonars and submarines and whatever.
Yeah,
and we didn't find anything. We found a few pieces here and there in the Réunion Island, and some stuff arrived, and meaning probably it crashed. That's for sure. But it's going to be one of the biggest mysteries in our...
They found the flaperon, didn't they?
Yeah, I think it was the flaperon, yeah.
They found the flaperon, and it was the ID of that plane. So if you're finding a little piece like that and it has the ID linking back to that plane, it definitely sunk in the ocean somewhere.
Yeah. Now, why?
There's still conspiracy theories out.
Yeah. I will add one thing before we move on about that topic. I think that the fact that the Indonesian government and the Malaysian government were maybe not very straightforward at the start, at least, didn't help. Because when you feel that a government or a company is not telling you the entire story, that kind of ignites the whole conspiracy part of it, right? And so if you don't trust the authorities at the start, the ones that are not only monitoring the airspace, but then also are responsible for the search and the report of what happened, then obviously you're never going to believe anything, and you're going to end up in forever speculations. But yeah, just for the families, I wish we can find something so we can basically tell to the families, your relatives are actually dead, and I'm sorry, and we're sorry, and let's move on, because it must be really hard to close that chapter. But having this maybe lingering light of hope in the back of your head that says, well, there's no body, so maybe my husband or my kid is still alive. There's not related, but if you want to read the best ever, it's an article in a newspaper, the best ever article about a crash, and not that it's fun to read about this. You should absolutely read The Long Fall of... Hold on, let me find... Give me 1 second. Of Swiss...
Sure.
So I'm going to... So
I'll just sing while you're doing it.
The Long Fall of 111 Heavy, which is an article that was written in Esquire. It's available online. The Long Fall of 111 Heavy. Take 15 minutes. It's a long article. It's almost poetry. It's it's an article that was written after the crash of Swissair Flight 111 that was flying from New York to Geneva, where I was born, and that has a lot to do about grief, about understanding how it happens when there's a crash of an aircraft and how families react, or at least tend to react in the author's eyes. And it's absolutely stunning. It's one of the best pieces of journalism, although is it fiction? Is it poetry? Is it journalism? It's really hard. This is why it's so striking. It's, and when I read that, and I can imagine the people from MH370 not having a conclusion to what happened, must be really tough. Really tough.
Well, every story has a little bit of fiction in it.
Always. So
but every true story has a little bit of fiction.
But guys, truly, The Long Fall of 111 Heavy, just Google that title. It's one of the best pieces about aviation in general and life in general. Of course, in a matter of death and accepting death, but it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
I actually don't think anyone's still listening, but if that one solitary person...
you have
Congratulations if you made it this far.
I think you have to make a two episode, like 2 and 1 hour, part 1 and part 2 maybe, because otherwise, I don't care. You can release it at a full. I'm just saying, I don't care. You do whatever you want, man. It's fine with me.
Well, it'll be the longest one if I do release it as a full. Yeah, but the person that does hang on to listen to the very end gets a Travelman Podcast T-shirt.
Ah, there you go.
So, there you go. You get something for hanging on. So if you can tell me exactly how... Wait, no, that wouldn't work. So I was about to say, if you can tell me exactly how long the episode is, then you win a T-shirt.
Yes.
That doesn't make any bloody sense. Anyway, final question.
Go ahead.
Let's wrap this baby up. It's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed everything.
Thank you so much
about
man.
The podcast. No problems. No worries, mate. So, if you could travel anywhere in the world now, where would you like to be? Where'd you like to go?
Yeah, probably somewhere I haven't been yet. So, and I change my mind all the time. So, probably right now, top of my head, either Myanmar or Colombia. I really want to go to see Medellin, especially in Colombia or Myanmar. Otherwise,
oh wow.
Otherwise, if it's a place I've been, probably Tokyo, because it's nice to always go back and have great food and great friends. Yeah, there you go.
Wow, fantastic. And what about what would you be eating or drinking? And if you could choose any food from around the world, and you can have it now, or the place you're going to go to, what would you be eating or drinking?
Damn, I'm a simple person when it comes to food. First, street food. I enjoy street food. Street food. There's something, which is why I love Asia so much, because of the street food culture.
Yeah.
If you want a specific plate, look, I'm not going to be very original. Because I'm a simpleton when it comes to food. I like simple. How do you say that? Simple taste and simple desire. Right now, I want a pizza, so probably it's going to be a pizza somewhere. Maybe a pizza in Tokyo or in New York. They're all very different. That's the thing. We could do an entire episode on pizza, but yeah, or what? Yeah. Or you would, or you know what? No, I'm going to change my answer. I would come to your place now because it must be like 10 p.m. for you, and you cook me something. That would be where. That's where I would go. To your place, and you cook me, not Mandy, you cook me something. That would be where I would like to go right now. Yeah, you. Whatever. Well, you could be...
The kitchen's closed, Paul.
Man, but yeah, by the time I fly, the time I need, I'll be...
Only drinks.
Yeah. Oh, drinks is fine with me as well, right? A beer is always good with me. Always sits very well.
Whiskey?
I love a good beer. Yeah, I like whiskey. Japanese whiskey, Nikka especially, 11. Jap whiskey, a good vodka as well. I'm a simple taste. I'm not very elaborate. I like simple things. So, I like basically to people to surprise me. Every time I go to a restaurant, if it's not street food, I usually tell them, do whatever you want. And do what you prefer and do stuff. This is how I love it. Because, if they choose, it's something they love or they love to cook, it's going to be good. There you go.
I would definitely make you something very nice if you just started knocking on my door now, which would be really weird because we're talking at the same time.
Yes.
Okay, so what's your favorite country and city?
Well, I guess a lot of people heard that I truly adore Japan and Tokyo especially. Of course, again, because I used to live there, so I have an emotional attachment to it. And I have especially an emotional attachment to every place, whether it's a city, a building, a community that loves attention to details. So yeah, Japan is very high up. But I love messy places. I love Athens. I love Beirut. Beirut is my favorite place in the world. And you know what? Wow. The list could go on, but at the end of the day, London is effing awesome. There's a reason I love living in London. It's not perfect, and no place is perfect, but London is really an awesome city, and I'm so glad to be living in London. And yeah, and no matter, again, what happens around Brexit, no Brexit, people, I don't care. It's an awesome city. It's one of the best cities in the world, and I'm very happy to be living here.
Yeah, London's fabulous. I love London. Okay, so final and last question out of my final questions. So what's the country or city that's most surprised you or surprised you the most?
So the first time I went to Beirut, probably because I've been to Beirut like more than 30 times, but the very first time, which was about 10 years ago, by the way, today, I land there. I take this very Beirut experience. I land there, I take a cab. Everybody says don't take a cab. Back then there was no Uber or whatever, so I take a cab. And as soon as we get out of the airport premise to that long road that goes up to Beirut, the driver, it was only speaking Arabic, and I don't speak Arabic. I just understand a few words. The driver steps out of pulls a car on the side of the road, steps out and disappears. And it's probably 11 p.m. And I'm like, what the F? So, and I know that in South Beirut, so I have all these images in my mind that South Beirut is supposedly dangerous. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? And like for 3-4 minutes, which in that time lasted in my mind for 35 minutes, but it was literally only 2-3 minutes, 3-4. Another guy shows up, actually puts himself in the driving seat and starts driving. And I'm like, what is happening right here? The guy again doesn't speak a word of English, only speaks Arabic. I realized later that simply the first driver had the license to drive and to access the airport. So probably he took another car to drive it. So it was just a business decision, but that was my introduction to Beirut. And as I said earlier in the show, we put our images in our head when it comes to a place. And for me, Beirut had all these images of a spy. There's this movie called Spy Games with Robert Redford and Brad Pitt. And of course, it's just a movie, but you have all these spies meeting in hotels and whatever. And for me, I was already in a spy movie. I'm like, oh, my driver is changing and maybe I'm getting led to a place I shouldn't be led to. And this is how my mind worked. And so that was my introduction to Beirut. And I fell in love with that place. And it surprised me a lot. And it has a lot of fabric. Of course, they still have some of the buildings, the old buildings from before the end of the war, the civil war, so 1990s, and that dates back, and you still have the bullet impacts on the wall, and at the same time, next to it, you have a brand new building, and you have, if you're an history buff, there was something called the Battle of the Hotel, so you have the old Hilton, which is basically still destroyed right there. Next to it, you have a fabulous hotel. It is so striking, and it's so cool, and it's the best place to party on earth, and the people are so nice. I have, probably because I'm very emotional, this is why I have this very much link to people in Central Asia, in the Middle East, in Mediterranean. I love people with a lot of emotions where, you drink too much, you smoke too much, you eat too much, you shout too much, you dance too much, you never sleep. Of course, I cannot do that every day because I need to work and because I like to work, actually. But I have a lot of... So Beirut for me was surprising. And the other one, I mentioned it already once, is Karachi. Pakistan, I had no idea what it would be. Karachi, yeah. And I would not... Would I recommend people to go to Karachi? It's really hard because it's a rundown city. It's heavily polluted. Maybe going alone is maybe not recommended, not because it's dangerous, but because you're not going to understand it. It's better to have locals showing you, which happened to me. But man, it was amazing. Man, I loved it. I fell hard for it when I went. It was surprising because the people were different than expected. The food was different than expected. The food in Pakistan is amazing, man. I don't know. So these two places, there's others.
Pakistani food's awesome.
It's just... When you either have no expectations, which was the case for me with Karachi, or when you have some expectation, which was the case for me in Beirut, and they are either completely overhauled or expanded or exalted, that's what magic happens. So yeah, these two places. The others, but these two places are amazing. There you go. That's the end.
Wow.
I think we spoke for 3.5 hours now.
That's 18 hours later, and now the after hours show. So you can hold on for another 15 hours as we chat about one topic for 15 hours. It was fantastic, Paul, honestly.
Thank you so much.
It was really fantastic.
I do apologize to your listeners because I do talk a lot, but travel triggers me. We were talking about something else I would have maybe not, but travel is so wonderful. And thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you so much for doing this show as well, because I've been listening to a few episodes. I'm not going to tell you that I've listened to all your episodes, but I love that. This is something that talks to me. And hopefully some of the stories I shared today talks to your audience and you. But thank you so much, Ben. It was fantastic.
That's all right. And how can people contact you if they want to contact you?
So I have a very hard name. Everybody F's up when they try to write it down. Though you guys in Melbourne have a very big Greek community, so probably you know how to write it. So the easiest,
very big Greek
community. The easiest is probably simply to go on paulpapa.com, which is a lot of people call me Papa because it's easier than Papadimitriou. So paulpapa.com, and there you have some bio. It's not maybe it's made for people that want to hire me as a speaker, but never mind. But you have some information, you have a contact form, you have links to my social media, and basically you can find me. And you can actually find the right way of writing my name. And my last name is usually the username in all social media. So on Instagram it is, on Facebook it is, on Twitter it is, and I'm pretty much everywhere. So yeah. So if you like photography, Instagram, I'm very active. I'm not very often on Facebook, but I will check my messages from time to time. And same Twitter, I'm kind of active. So yeah, it's very easy to find me. But paulpapa.com is where you'll find me, all the information if you ever want to talk to me. And maybe when I'm in one of the cities, and I hope that's going to be Australia this year. I mean, I'll meet you, Ben, but maybe some of the other listeners I'd be very happy to have a beer with.
Absolutely, yeah. Let me know when you're coming to Melbourne and we'll plan something. And then, yeah, that'll be amazing to have a beer with you.
Yeah,
sit down and just talk travel. We'll be talking for another 15 hours on travel, I reckon. Exactly. But if anyone wants to follow me, just pretty much, I'm on Instagram, Twitter, I'm on everything. Travelman Podcast, that's all you have to type in. You type that in Google and I come up everywhere. We've been going that long, so I don't really want to wax lyrical about all my hashtags and travel me and follow that and do this and do that, because this is about Paul. And thank you very much, Paul, for coming on the podcast.
No, thank you, Ben, again. Thank you so much. It was an honor, a pleasure, a lot of fun. Sure I understand. Sorry, my Siri just went up. I'm going to start that.
Thank you, Paul. And I'll press the stop recording in a second. Then you'll see that you might have to click something once.
I know. Yeah, let me
I've stopped recording, but we'll still be able to hear each other.
Yeah, I know.
So
I know.
1 second.
Stop. Yeah, don't worry.
Oh, fantastic. And now for the after show.